Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Jim Heyman. I am the Vice President of ControlsCentral.com, and I want to say thank you for joining us this afternoon. We are very glad to have you. We know you're busy and have a lot of other things you could be doing, so we appreciate part of your afternoon. We think we have really an outstanding presentation today, so we're going to get right to that. There's just a couple of things that I would like to mention at the beginning, a couple of housekeeping items. Pretty sure you're all familiar with the drill at this point. The webinars are muted, so we don't have a lot of crosstalk and distraction. Makes for a very clean recording and everyone can hear well. However, we do want to invite questions. Though it's not an open forum to talk, there is a chat box that each of you can see for questions. We would encourage you, as your questions come up during the presentation, type them in, and our presenter will be glad to address those either at that time if it's appropriate, or there'll certainly be time for Q&A at the end. So also a couple other things I want to mention. This webinar is being recorded, and it will be available on demand for you or anyone on your team that you would like to see it. Maybe someone that was going to join and they got called away. We would be glad to make that available, so let us know. Also, on the right-hand box, you'll notice there are two PDFs, and those are handouts that Brandon has provided today for you. So if you'd like to download those at any time, you're welcome to have them. They're pretty informative. So just one other thing that I want to mention, and that is during the webinar today, presenter will be conducting a brief poll. So we'd like to get as many of you as possible to respond to that. It's a quick poll, and he'll be telling you more about it. So anyway, that's the end of our sort of opening remarks, and I'd like to just quickly move along here and present. This is a Johnson Controls presentation, as you can see from the screen. Our presenter today is Brandon Davis. He is a sales manager, and he is going to present the new JCI LUX Thermostat and the CS1 WiFi Thermostat. So thanks for joining us. Brandon, it's all yours, sir.
Sounds great. Thank you, Jim, and thanks for having me today. And everybody, thanks for spending some time with us here this afternoon. First off, Harshal, I'll give a little bit of a background on myself here. So Harshal, maybe it's a good time if you want to kick off the poll, and while that's going and everybody is getting some answers going there, I'll give a little bit of background on myself and kind of why we're doing what we're doing. So again, thanks, Jim. My name is Brandon Davis. I've been with Johnson Controls about 13 years. Sales manager for our national distribution accounts, as well as leading our residential controls business, which is where a lot of the thermostats here fall into play. Kind of done a few stints around with Johnson Controls with our controls business, as well as our equipment business. I moved over and was managing some of that for a while for VADs, fan coil units, and some of our other distribution partners. And then most recently, about 2 years ago, came back into the controls business. And then I've got a timeline here after this poll is complete that we'll go into a little bit more depth about the timeline of Johnson Controls, as well as it applies to the thermostat business, and then how LUX, if you're familiar with them, or even if you're not, how they really fit into the fold and where they came to be within the Johnson Controls portfolio. The reason the poll is important, I recognize that there's a lot of different contractors and facilities members that are potentially on today that work in a number of different markets, whether it be healthcare, commercial real estate, residential, apartments, condos. Of course, we have lots of different products that apply to those different channels, but there's also different areas within thermostats that we have some products that apply differently depending on those markets as well. So that's helpful for me to know, so I can tailor some of the conversation to a little bit more of the market that you serve today. So with that, I'll jump into a little bit of history as it applies to Johnson Controls. And when we look at residential thermostat history, other than Johnson Controls inventing the first thermostat back in 1883, from there we really took a spin into the commercial direction. That's what we've always been. If you're familiar with Johnson Controls, it's most likely where you're familiar with seeing us. From a LUX thermostats perspective, They started out around a similar time frame, but they took a very different approach and different path. They were very much residentially focused, and so you can kind of see how and why they ended up in places that they ended up. But it's interesting where Johnson Controls invented the very first thermostat back in 1883. Lux actually introduced at that time the iconic minute minder timer you see there on the bottom left. So I think, we all either know that, we might even own one, or we have a family member or friend or someone that has or had one on a counter growing up, or maybe still does. We still sell a ton of those through, Bed Bath & Beyond and Ace Hardware. It's just a very timeless, iconic device that's out there. Just an interesting little tidbit of history for where Lux started. And then, following along in that residential theme from Lux's perspective, they played very much then because of that in certain channels actually where JCI was not. So, your retail channel, Ace Hardware's, Lowe's, a lot of your home improvement type of outfits. They also had a presence within the utility channel. So as we talk a little bit later in the presentation about, how this all fits into smart thermostats and connected devices, that obviously plays very much into the utilities, as there's lots of rebates. I think, as we all probably know, probably get emails or notifications in the mail from our power companies regularly about the smart thermostat deals and things like that. The reason being is, of course, there's lots of energy savings that comes along with smart thermostats and connected devices as well. So they had a very good presence within the utility space. Then even most recently, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few slides, about some of the most recent partnerships and things in more of the smart home realm of things, whether it be with your cable companies or security companies and things like that. So very interesting, diverse background from the Lux perspective, but really that kind of complemented very well with the Johnson Controls portfolio, which leads us to about 2018, about just almost 2 years ago, when Lux was acquired by Johnson Controls. So some of you may or may not have known that. So that portfolio of Lux thermostats, some of which we'll talk about today, was at that point then brought into the Johnson Controls portfolio of products, and we've been spending the last 2 years, pretty heavily integrating that in and continuing to grow those products within our existing channels for Johnson Controls on the commercial side, but also continuing to leverage those channels that Lux was in that we were not as a company. So really trying to put those pieces together. So again, today I wanted to focus primarily on the connected thermostats, and really a very new product. I've got 2 new products I'm actually going to talk about today, but wanted to at least highlight some of our other existing products as well. So the first one we'll talk about is the Kono in the middle, which is kind of the flagship connected thermostat that Lux brought to market and still exists today. Came out a couple of years ago. We'll talk about that in a little bit more depth. Next is the CS1 on the left, which is the brand new product that we just released, which is a really nice little entry-level product. And then I'll talk also, I'm not going to go into much detail on the Geo on the far right, but it is worth mentioning, if you're not familiar with the Lux product portfolio, that's a really unique kind of niche product. It is a smart thermostat, which means it's connected to Wi-Fi. But if you've installed a thermostat before, either professionally or personally in your home, and you've done a smart thermostat, you know that it requires 5 wires to actually power up that device. Of course, not all homes, depending on when they were built, or facilities have 5 wires. So then you're faced with either having to pull another wire or 2 or 3 to the thermostat, or you're limited in what you can actually use. So the Geo actually is the only battery-powered smart thermostat on the market, which means that it can be installed with only as little as 2 wires in the installation in the wall, and the rest of the functionality all can take place via the power of the battery. So that means you get Wi-Fi connectivity, that means you can get app control, that means you can take advantage of different integrations with Amazon Alexa and Google Home and all those more modern features, but you could retrofit it into an older installation or an installation that may not have the required wires, and then you can utilize the batteries to then perform and power those other functions. So really, really unique device, and again, it's a niche product, and we're the only one out there that has one like that. So worth mentioning that. We'll go into a little bit more depth into the Kono and the CS1, and the prices that you see here is really just a price comparison. That's an MSRP, so street price. This is, not certainly a contractor or distribution type pricing. This is more what you would see out on the street. just to give you kind of a comparison, and that kind of will play into a little bit more of the conversation for CS1, and one of its attractive features certainly is its entry-level price point as well. So first, we'll talk a little bit about that Coil thermostat. Again, this is kind of the flagship Wi-Fi connected thermostat product that LUX brought to market a couple years ago. A couple unique features of this particular product. The first one is the intuitive user interface. So that big dial that you see on the front is really the only interface that thermostat has. And interestingly enough, the reason people tell us that they really, really like that is because it is reminiscent of some of the very old thermostats where you simply just had a dial. And people just like that. Hey, turn it to the right to turn the temperature up, turn it to the left to turn the temperature down. It's just very intuitive, very easy to interact with and change set points and things like that, move through menus. People love that interface instead of a bunch of buttons and things like that. Second piece is also the interchangeable faceplate. So you can see up in the top right there, that cover that covers about 3/4 of the front of the thermostat. That pops off just very easily off the front and can interchange it. It comes standard in either a gloss black or kind of a brushed metallic type of cover. But then we do have about a dozen different colors that you can get, from white, red, blue, green, champagne, and even a paintable cover that could be changed to match wall colors, to meet your mood or match your decor, or even changed every other month if you felt so inclined. They're very inexpensive and so easy to change. So really unique element, patented piece of the Coil thermostat to kind of make it a little bit of an architecturally pleasing device as well, instead of just a box on the wall. Smart scheduling is built in for all of our Wi-Fi devices, and really what that means is it's how we measure occupancy. So when you look at how you really ultimately recognize energy savings when it comes to these smart thermostats, it's how do you tell when the space is occupied or unoccupied, and then you're able to do step backs and turn the temperatures down or up, or so however you see fit when you're not home, so you're not heating and cooling the space when there's no one there. Our devices in particular, we do that through geofencing. So what that means is it actually takes place through the app. So once you connect that Wi-Fi thermostat, any of the devices we've talked about here today so far, within the app, then basically you connect it to Wi-Fi. You would set up a radius around your home. Once you and your smartphone leave that radius, no matter how big or small you want to set it, then it knows you're outside the radius. It goes ahead and it can set back the temperature or whatever you set your set points to do. When you and your smartphone come back into that radius, then it knows that you're on your way home or close to home, and it will set your temperature back up so that it's at a comfortable temperature when you arrive back home. So that applies to all of all the smart devices that we'll talk about here today. Seamless integration with mainstream home automation platforms. That really means, your Apple HomeKit, Alexa, Google Home, all these devices will seamlessly integrate with any of those. So then you can actually then talk to your devices and have it set up scenes or do different things or set back your temperature or things that nature whenever you're not there, or even when you are home. Built as a platform, so we do have a couple hub-based solutions. I'll talk a little bit more in detail about that on the next slide and what that means as it applies to some other variants of the Coil. And then again, universal compatibility. So this is going to work with 95%, 98% probably of your typical conventional systems. 2 heat, 1 cool is really going to be your limitation. Mostly there are a number of stages of heating and cooling. It'll work with heat pumps, gas, oil, electric furnaces, even for some light commercial applications. We've used these on some rooftop units, smaller systems within a commercial space, common areas. Again, really your number of stages of heating or cooling is going to be more the limiting factor here versus what piece of equipment you could actually use this on. Those other 2 variants, as I mentioned, a hub-based solution. We have 2 other versions of the Coil, and these are basically a different wireless protocol. So the previous version, we talked about Wi-Fi. I think that's what everybody is most familiar with in their homes. Most of us have Wi-Fi in our house. We're familiar with that protocol. Zigbee and Z-Wave are 2 additional wireless protocols that are used. And the easiest way to, I think, illustrate a hub-based solution when it comes to a thermostat is really to talk about other devices in the home. So if there's any smart home gurus out there or that have it, for yourself, you might have a smart doorbell, you might have a smart door lock, you might have some smart light switches, maybe you have an alarm system that connects to your Wi-Fi, and then you have a smart thermostat as well. each one of those devices is all going to naturally, if it's Wi-Fi, they're all going to have their own individual app that you're going to bring up to arm and disarm my security system. I bring up my doorbell app to look at my screen. I bring up my light app to turn up and down my lights. The hub-based solutions, what that does is it basically brings all of those devices that are speaking a common language, either Zigbee or Z-Wave, into one central app. So then at that point, you just have one app that you're opening up, and then all of your devices that you might have in a home or a space or a hotel or something like that, they're all speaking the same language, and so then they're all controlled via the same app. Another benefit to that is then at that point, you can start to actually tie things together. So instead of just when you go outside of that geofence circle we talked about, instead of it just setting back your temperature on your thermostat, now if it's all connected together via one hub, now when you go outside of that geofence circle, now it might set back your thermostat, but it's also going to lock your deadbolts, it's going to turn your lights off, it's going to arm your alarm system, all of those devices all at once through one particular action. And then same thing on the way home, maybe you come back into that radius, it's going to set your temperature back up, it's going to unlock your front door, it's going to turn your outside lights on, it's going to disarm your alarm system, and maybe it opens your garage door all in one fell swoop. So those are some of the advantages, and just another way to illustrate what a hub-based solution really means versus just a traditional device that would be connected to Wi-Fi. So we do have those two different variants of the Kono as well. Look the same, perform the same, just depends on what language it speaks, so to speak. When we look at the next product, the CS1 that I mentioned, this is the newest product that we have out, and the main focus for the discussion today is really a much more traditional looking thermostat, and really that was driven by customer feedback and input. So we interviewed a lot of customers that told us that there was a market, and we learned there was a market for a very traditional looking thermostat. While people liked that dial that went up and down, very easy, intuitive to interact with, people like a white thermostat. It's traditional, plain looking, on my wall. It's got big numbers, it's got big buttons so I can see, but at the same time, I want all of the latest and greatest features. I want the geofencing. I want the Alexa, the Google, and all the stuff that comes with it. I want to be able to do all my setbacks and connect to Wi-Fi. Oh, and by the way, I want it for a really low price. So that was really everything that drove the design and the development of this CS1 product. And we were able to do all of that for a really, really nice low entry-level price, all in a nice package. So same home automation integrations for the Alexa, Google, IFTTT, same geofencing. Again, this all utilizes the same app, so you could have any combination of these in your home. It all uses the same app and interface, and then it hits your same typical universal capability applications as well. 2 heat, 1 cool, again, for the CS1, and covers all of those same applications as the previous Kono does as well. A little bit of a comparison. So if you are in a thermostat market, you're installing a lot of thermostats, just kind of gives you a little bit of a look at where this kind of falls in. Emerson, Sensi, the Honeywell, that's their entry-level Wi-Fi thermostat. You can see how the CS1 fits in there from a price point standpoint. Very similar features and benefits to these, but you can see a much more modern look and feel, but also maintaining some of that traditional look as well with the CS1. All for a really, really nice entry-level price, and really giving you a full-featured device at the same time. Another new product, now this actually isn't out yet, so a little bit of a sneak peek from Johnson Controls. We switch gears a little bit more towards the commercial side of things, just to kind of give a little bit of flavor there as well for the group. Not all residential. This is our new fan coil thermostat. So if you're familiar with thermostats and maybe less familiar with fan coils or PTACs, really the only difference for the most part is the number of fan speeds. Most residential furnaces have a single fan speed. There are some that have variable now, but most have a single fan speed. But most fan coils and PTACs that you find in commercial office spaces or commercial buildings or hotels, they're going to have 3 speeds, a low, medium, and high. So unless you're only going to utilize one of those speeds, it's really tough to use a standard thermostat. You really need a thermostat that's going to have 3 distinct speeds. And that's really what I tell people is the biggest difference between a dedicated fan coil thermostat versus a traditional thermostat. So this is a non-programmable version. So this will work on a 2-pipe, 4-pipe fan coil system. It'll work for PTACs. This is a very, very basic entry-level thermostat. No connectivity. This is just a low-cost, put it on the wall, connected thermostat. So great for retrofits, great for, some common areas within some buildings. There's always some ancillary fan coils potentially in different types of building settings that, don't need to be connected to a bunch of different things or a building automation system. It's just a standalone type of device. Even a lot of hotel rooms are even like that as well. This is perfect for that low-cost entry-level stat, nice-looking device to connect to those fan coils and PTACs. We can do a remote temp sensor. We can do a remote pipe sensor if it is a changeover system. If you're changing over from heating to cooling, you only have 2 pipes at the unit. We can do also a remote wired aux sensor. We do have a multitude of other features and options here. You can do a keypad lockout. Of course, this is in an area where you don't want just wandering fingers changing set points, which is often the case in a lot of public spaces. We can, there's on-off modes, off modes, vacation modes. We can also do pad printing and do custom branding with logos, either for a contractor or for a customer or facility on the device. A lot of people like to have that information right there on the device. We can actually do that for all of the LUX thermostats as well, not just this fan coil thermostat. So any of the products we've talked about today, as well as any of our other non-connected, non-Wi-Fi type devices, we can do pad printing, contractor logos. Talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes as well. So again, this is a non-programmable version. We do have the same thing in a programmable version. Again, same entry-level type of thermostat. Actually, I'm sorry, the first one was programmable. This one's not programmable. Same features and functions, 3-speed fan coil, 2-pipe, 4-pipe, just a different flavor, both the programmable and non-programmable version. So I did mention that we do have other products. Again, we focus primarily on the connected Wi-Fi products today, but we do have, and LUX had a full range of thermostat portfolio, both all, touchscreen, non-connected, your typical 7-day programmable type stats, 5-day programmable thermostats, mechanical, snap action stats. We do have a full range of those as well that are available. Our website is pro.luxproducts.com. There's a full catalog there as well. So just wanted to at least highlight that the rest of the portfolio there for those that may or may not be familiar with the LUX now Johnson Controls full thermostat portfolio. So I mentioned the app several times with the smart devices. Common app that's used across all of the smart thermostats. And you could have, if you have a house that has 2 units or a space that's got multiple units. I think the limitation might be 100 thermostats, might even be more than that can be loaded in. So you could even have a large complex that could have multiple thermostats and all be part of the same common app. We use the same platform across all of them. This is actually a new app that you see here that's going to be out in the next month or so. This is where all of the functionality really takes place, because you notice with the thermostats, there's very little interaction and very little information that's going to be on the screen of the actual thermostat, mostly just your set point, maybe your mode, and things like that, very basic functionalities. Most of the advanced functionality is all built into the app. So that's where you're going to do all of your set points, your geofencing, set up any personalization features, any energy saving features, things like that are all going to be done in the app. You can see on the far right, it might be a little difficult to see, but there's some things in there that talk about pet owners and energy savings. And you might say, well, why does my thermostat care if I'm a pet owner? But what that can do is if you say that you are, as I am, and I'm also an allergy sufferer, if you click yes as you set up your personal preferences, it will actually cycle your fan more frequently throughout the day in order to circulate your air and help clean out some of that dust and dander and things like that. So it's got some real neat personalization capabilities. Of course, that all again takes place in the app. It's not specific to any particular thermostat. That's all in the app. We did talk about co-branding a little bit, so we can pad print a contractor logo on the device itself, on the thermostat. We can also do it in the app itself. So where you see that LUX logo right at the top, we can actually put a contractor's logo and information in there. And we've done studies and have data that show that consumers tend to interact with their smart thermostat apps 2 to 3 times per week. So with the exception of social media and email, that's actually really high interaction rates for apps compared to what we all have on our phone, whether it be our banking apps or other miscellaneous apps and things like that we might only go into once a month or even less frequently than that. So to have your information right there within the app, in an app that a consumer is interacting with on such a regular basis is invaluable. We also will have here in the near future, when this version of the app is released, the ability to do push notifications and some marketing within the app for the contractor. So where you see in the center screenshot, there's that sun. That's actually a little weather bar that's across the top. It gives you your outside weather conditions and your forecast. That actually can be used as well to run some sort of messaging to your customers. So for instance, if you have a winter heating tune-up special or something like that maybe you're running, you can have all of this be pushed out to your customers via the app. And of course, only your customers would see that, so that you can take advantage of that marketing. So it's basically a free marketing tool to be able to have information out there in front of your customers on a regular basis. So really nice feature there from a contracting perspective. Lastly, I wanted to highlight our technical support team. So they're located in Philadelphia. They take nearly 40,000 plus calls annually. But really what's most important about this from both a consumer standpoint and I think a contractor and a distribution support standpoint, all through the distribution tiers, is their skill level. So they're very well-rounded, not only in troubleshooting the thermostat itself, but also the HVAC equipment. They can get down into the nuts and bolts as to why things aren't working and trace that back, whether it's a thermostat issue, and get down into the equipment as well. But then when you start looking at the smart thermostat side of things, most of the calls that we get are actually very much connectivity and IoT related. So now you have a tech support person who is skilled in the HVAC equipment and the thermostat, but also getting calls about my internet and my cable provider and my router and things like that could be contributing to why they might not be able to connect their thermostat to the internet and to Wi-Fi. And so our tech support team is very highly trained in both and has experience in both IoT and HVAC. So they're able to, very much troubleshoot those systems and troubleshoot those situations as they come in, to really help best support, both our our consumers as well as contractors and distribution partners as well. So relatively short presentation today, but really wanted to just highlight the new Wi-Fi product, CS1, give you a little bit of a refresher if you're familiar, if not a little intro to some of the other Wi-Fi products and hub devices, as well as some of our product portfolio and what we have to come here in the near future. But happy to answer some questions, and we will open it up from there.
Okay. Brandon, great job. This is Jim again. For those of you on the call, we welcome your questions. I've actually got a couple things we've kicked around. Maybe I could start things off. This one has to do with multi-dwelling units. Brandon, what products do you have that would be a good fit in the MDU multi-dwelling unit market?
Yep, great question, Jim. And so there's several there, and the multi-dwelling unit MDU market is a big one for us most recently, and that really came along with the acquisition of LUX and kind of opening up the doors into a lot of these other spaces. So when you look at a lot of these multi-dwelling units, if you're not familiar, thinking of apartments and condo type buildings, you've got lots of living spaces and a lot of people in a common area. Many of those spaces are utilizing some sort of a hub-based solution like we talked about. And one of the main reasons behind that, which we didn't talk about, we talked about kind of the consumer end of that, but the other end of it is the facility management side of things. So you can imagine from an apartment and a condo facility, especially apartments where you might have turnover and you might have people coming in and leases constantly ending and starting, you have a back-end portal, so to speak, where the facilities management team can actually grant access to those new tenants. So imagine if I live in an apartment 4C, I come in, I have a Wi-Fi stat on my wall, so now I want to connect that to my phone and control my thermostat and have it, do its setbacks when I come and go. But then I move out in 6 months. I don't want that new tenant to have their thermostat still be controlled by my phone or have me have the ability to do that. So I need to have access basically, quote unquote, granted to me and revoked. So there's a piece to those MDU spaces that ties into that hub-based solution. And most of the hub-based solutions do have that back-end portal. So when I talked about the Zigbee and the Z-Wave product, those very much lend themselves to the MDU space. And part of that depends on what infrastructure is being put into the apartment. We actually partner with a company called Stratus out of Pennsylvania. So Stratus does just that. They have that back-end portal. They have their own central app. They work very closely with apartments and condo buildings. They put in their backbone infrastructure that then supports the smart door locks, all the smart devices that are going to be in those apartments and condos, and then our Z-Wave Kono device that we talked about seamlessly integrates into that Stratus platform, so that that's able to be controlled by the tenant, and then the facilities management team can actually then, control and grant access and put in limitations and things like that via their backend port. So great question, Jim. So I would say the Z-Wave and the Zigbee product of the Kono are the top ones for the MDU space.
Okay. All right. Very good. Marshall or Brandon, check your chat window. Are you seeing any questions there, Brandon, in your screen, or Harshal?
Yeah, hi, this is Harshal. So, Brandon, do you mind also reading the question for the audience? What's the question?
Yeah,
answer?
let me try to just make this window a little bit bigger here, because it's kind of got to scroll through. It says, which unit would replace a Viconic VT 7600 stat? And give me 1 second, and what I'm going to do, I'm familiar with Viconics, but I just want to double check which one that is. We had used some Viconics 7600. Okay, so there's a number, is what I was thinking. There's a number of Viconics thermostats out there, a number of different variations. There's rooftop unit ones, 2 heat, 2 cool. Looking at a couple different ones. There's actually, what else do we have here? So it's mostly, rooftop and heat pump controllers. So depending on your application, you could use really, most likely we have another product that looks very similar to the Geo. That Geo product, we have one that's called a Geo X, and that's actually the only one that we have that is, it's a 3 heat, 2 cool model. And so if you're looking for some of these rooftops, I'm looking at the same one that whoever asked the question, I think maybe Chris asked, 2 heat, 2 cool was the one that came up first. You would want to use something like the Geo X, which is a 3 heat, 2 cool. So you're going to have the number of heating and cooling stages to cover that. Now, some of the Viconics, depending on which one you were looking at, because I know there's a number of variations, some of the Viconics devices are standalone. Some of them are, backnet, or they tie into building automation systems. So the products that we have today, again, we're focusing primarily on residential applications. So they're all going to be Wi-Fi, or again, the Zigbee or Z-Wave. If we get into a situation where you have an application where you do require something that's backnet that can tie into a building automation system, we do have another product from our thermostat portfolio that's not showcased here. We call it our TEC. T as in Tom, E as in Edward, C as in cat, terminal equipment controller. So it's a nice looking thermostat. If you search Johnson Controls TEC 3000 is the latest and greatest. That actually has a number of different applications. You can do backnet, you can do building automation integration, there's some more flexibility on your heating stages and cooling stages. So as you start to get more into the commercial side of things, depending on what application you're looking for that particular question, you may find yourself moving over something more like the TEC in the Johnson Controls portfolio. Hopefully that answered your question there. Looks like how many lines of contractor logo are available. If I'm interpreting that correctly, my guess is that's meaning on the actual device. And typically we can do, it really depends on how big the font and the logo is. We've had some where, contractors want to do like their nice size logo, and then they want to put a name, and then they also want to put a phone number. That can get a little bit small sometimes, depending on which device that you're looking to pad print on. But typically speaking, we can at least do 2 lines. We usually have no problem doing the actual contractor logo, the name of the company, and then also a phone number. We can usually get on there. Our touchscreen thermostat is a little bit tough sometimes to do all that. We get a little limited because the border around the screen, since it is a larger touchscreen, gets a little bit thin. So sometimes we little limited on that particular model, but most of the other models, I'll go back here, if I can go back to my other screen. This one here, this is the touch screen that's at the top in the programmable section. So you can see we're a little limited in space on that one, but most of these other models where we do a lot more of our pad printing, you can see there's a lot of real estate on the front of those pieces of plastic. So usually no problem in covering the name, a logo, and a phone number on the front. So hopefully that was answer to that question as far as what you're looking for there, Chris.
Do you have any other questions?
Looks like that's all I had in the chat window.
One just came in. Here you go, Brendan. One just came in.
Okay, let's see. We have 4 systems that we would control. How would we do vacation? Looks like it got cut off. Are you able to see the full message, Harshal, on your end? It looks like after vacation it got cut off.
Yeah, I can read it out. So it says we have 4 systems that we would control. How would we do vacation? Hopefully put all in once per year.
Yep. So if you have 4 systems, and like I said, you can connect well over 100 thermostats into the app. So if you have 4 systems, you can easily have then 4 thermostats that would show up in your app. And actually, I'll show you the screenshot here. So this actual screenshot on the iPhone picture on the left, you can see there's actually 4 devices. So it's a great example for what you asked. This would be the equivalent of having your 4 systems in your house. So this one was actually a guest house, but they had a man cave thermostat. There was one upstairs and one living room. This would be the equivalent of your 4 systems that you have. And yes, within the app, you can set all of these into a vacation mode together simultaneously. So it's very easy to set up and do for all of your devices and all of your systems all at once centrally within the app. Looks like there might be another one here. So for multi-zone, okay, question is for multi-zone hydronic installations that share a cooling zone, can these stats share information to average temperatures or use of the fan? So currently the answer to that would be no. So we're not set up just yet for true zoning applications or having any remote sensors or anything like that that would actually communicate back and share information. That is on our roadmap though, to be able to have those. Well, basically we have the backbone and the infrastructure set up for it, but the feature is not actually turned on just yet, but we will have the capability to do that in the near future. Good question though.
Okay, all right. Any others on your screen, Harshal?
Looks like that's it.
Okay.
Oh, one second. One just came in right now.
That's all I see on my end. Yep.
You got another one, Harshal? Go ahead.
There's one more.
Okay, next one is, scroll through a second. Can you schedule, just read this. Today. The question says, can you schedule 7 for next year today? So how far, if I'm reading that correctly, could you schedule out, how far out can you schedule your vacation date? It sounds like that's looking at July 4th. So could I schedule a vacation in the calendar in my app for as far out as 7/4 of next year? And I believe it actually does go out 12 months. So in your example, since we're the end of July, I believe you can go out and set your vacations out up to 12 months out. Hopefully I was interpreting that question correctly. Looks like another one just popped up. And it actually looks like that might have gotten cut off. It looks like it just says programming. Laura had a question. It just says programming 1 year. I'm not sure what the question was there, Laura. So maybe if you want to retype that, I can come back to that one.
Okay. All right. You know what? Maybe while you're given that opportunity, I would just like to remind everyone this webinar has been recorded, and if you'd like to see it or share it with someone else, it will be available. We'll get that out to you. Also, don't forget, if you haven't had a chance to download the 2 PDFs that are handouts on the right-hand side of your screen, You can just click on those and download them, and some great information there. Okay. So, Brandon, are you seeing any last questions? Are we good?
I think that is it. Looks like Laura wrote hers. Programming will be up to a year. And so, yes, I think I'm understanding that for your vacations and things like that, it will be up to a year that you could schedule, it's vacation events. Any other programming that you would do as far as set points and, night set points or away set points and things like that, your standard functionality outside of a vacation event would be, set into perpetuity until you change that. So any of your traditional programming, once you do your initial setup, that's going to stay until you actually change it. And then your vacation events, you would set those, and yes, do those up to a year out. So you can set a number of vacation events throughout the year for different durations, and it'll automatically then set your systems back or do whatever you want it to do in your set points while you're away.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up. I want to say to everyone on the call today, we appreciate your business on Control Central. We want to be your resource for all the products that you need, and certainly we're pleased to be carrying Johnson Controls and also the Lux line and this new CS1. So if you do have any questions, I believe Brandon gave information. They do have a whole team to back you up. These products are in stock and available. Brandon, any final comments that you'd like to make to wrap it up?
No, I think it was that was about everything. I appreciate the engagement, appreciate the questions, and certainly everybody taking some time out of their afternoon to spend with us here. And again, don't forget about the two handouts. There is one on the CS1 and one on the Kono Smart that we talked about. And yep, there's certainly more information at pro.luxproducts.com, or certainly I think Jim, I believe the group should get my information, and feel free to reach out to me with any other additional questions, whether it be about anything we talked about today or anything else that you might have questions about. Happy to help.
Okay, very good. I want to say thank you to Harshal Mahangre. He is our IT director for Controls Central out of our Southern California headquarters. And this has been Controls Central. We appreciate it. Brandon Davis with JCI, thank you, sir. Thank you, Harshal. And thank you all of our attendees for being with us this afternoon. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you.